The WTO, the World Trade Organization, has a kind of nasty image right now, as exemplified by the protests in Seattle. But I view the WTO as a potential source of correcting a lot of what's wrong with international trade. It's a matter of getting the right people appointed to that commission, and of course that's done by elected officials, so it's a matter of electing the right people to appoint the right people to the World Trade Organization. But I think the World Trade Organization could be the arena for hammering out a lot of this harmonization of international trade policy.
I'm concerned about speculations in Wall Street, where it seems that it's moving away from investment to more of a day trading scenario, where it's so much speculation that right now the price of gold is higher than the price of platinum, and that some bad news story comes on, so everybody moves their money from the bull market mutual fund to the bear market mutual fund, which has some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of things where everybody clicks on that, and so then on their little computers at home, moving their money around, and so the market reacts as if it was actually the bull market when it wasn't there.
Yeah, I spoke before about a financial transaction. The idea there is that every time a financial transaction is made, it's buying a stock, buying a bond, exchanging one currency for another currency, there'd be a tax. And the purpose of that would be to eliminate a lot of this flash trading, this moving back and forth from one asset to another, or moving assets from one country to another, from one currency to another. Our financial markets are way too volatile. We need to put some brakes in there, some speed bumps to slow this process down.
I'm just like to know your opinion. It's a conspiracy theory or actually happening as the population grows. Major agricultural companies and other companies are buying up the agricultural property around the world and the water rights, and are going to be in control when everything goes in the game.
It's not a conspiracy theory at all, it's a fact. Yes, I'm sorry. The question is, are major agricultural companies buying up land and water rights around the world in anticipation that they're going to become more valuable as population grows and the demand for food grows? And yes, that is absolutely happening. If you want to make it sound less conspiratorial, they could be viewing it as simply a good place to put their money, a good investment. You want to buy assets that you think are going to increase in value. For those of you who are old enough to remember Will Rogers, I don't remember him, but I remember the name. Will Rogers is famous for having said, you can't go wrong buying land because they're not making it anymore. So, generally land is always a good place to put your money.
A lot of people focus on the Federal Reserve. Ron Paul says, in the Federal Reserve, to go back to the 19th century. But he's joined with Bernie Sanders on auditing the Fed, and then presumably you could, democratize the Fed would be another alternative, and then the whole people get in. I hear a lot of talk about currency among a lot of people, or some people who are talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. Money is a interesting topic. You can get lost in the arcane language of finance and money. It's a very complicated subject. I am not one who vilifies the Federal Reserve System. I think Ron Paul is way off base when he tries to pin all the blame for virtually everything on the Federal Reserve System. He talks about the Federal Reserve System as just printing money, just running the printing presses and printing money and flooding the country with money. And it concludes that's going to cause inflation. You know the old saying about how generals are always fighting the last war? A lot of politicians and even economists are fighting the last economic problem. The last economic problem was during the 1970s when we had high inflation, and we became convinced that, boy, if you print more money, it's going to cause inflation. Well, as you probably know, the Federal Reserve System has been creating vast amounts of money in the last 2 or 3 years. And I don't see any signs of inflation, no significant inflation. So there is no necessary connection between the Fed creating more money and inflation. And in fact, I think the Fed's doing exactly the right thing. If the Fed weren't creating more money, I think the economy would be weaker than it is. We could potentially be in a recession, if not a depression. And I hope one last comment before I take the next question. I hope everybody knows we're not out of this problem. In fact, we may not even have hit the worst of it yet. There's a very real possibility that we'll have a real double dip here and be back even worse than we were 2 or 3 years ago.
Hello. I see that your first bullet point is campaign reform. And I'm curious, now that corporations are considered human beings, and spending money is a First Amendment right of free speech, how is it possible to reform the campaign reality whereby corporations can either make or break a politician's career based on their contribution of money?
Let's see who's in this question. Okay. Did you arrive late? Because I addressed that very point. I said that by campaign finance reform, I mean overturning Citizens United Supreme Court decision and disallowing corporations from making unlimited contributions.
I think we might have time for about 2 more questions.
I see somebody with a hand up there. I'll wait for the microphone.
We're going to go ahead and let you pick, and then we will get a microphone to the person.
So I wanted to sort of critique what you said about controlling overpopulation. You did say that economic development is incredibly important for doing so, but actually simply controlling growth rates is important for economic development. I think one of the best solutions to economic development is actually the empowerment of women, and that will both that you sort of need economic development to empower women, or to empower women. Yes. You need the empowerment of women for economic development. And that's why there's such a huge, part of why there's such a huge north-south gap, if you will. And my question is, if you say one more time what your recommended reading was. You recommended that we further reading.
Reading.
Okay, just write it down.
First, let me say I completely agree with you that empowering women is essential. Most case studies of development in various countries show that economic development promotes independence for women, more job opportunities, enlightened attitudes, less need to have children in order to have a source of support in your old age. So is the point you're making that it's the chicken and the egg? You need to concentrate both on economic development and empowerment of women, that they have a mutual interaction. Yeah. And then the reading was the November 24th issue of Rolling Stone magazine, an article on how tax cuts have affected the economy over the past decade. I'm not sure I'm right about this. I think the author's name is Jim Dickinson, but I'm not